Hi, everyone. Welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm your host, founder of Speaking Your Brand, Carol Cox. And with me is our lead speaking coach, Diane Diaz. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Carol.
I am so excited for this Backstage live show because we are going to be answering the top 10 questions that we get about public speaking. So we solicited all of you a couple of weeks ago to submit your questions. So we got questions that way. And then for the last year, every time someone subscribes to our email newsletter list, they get a question that asks them what is their biggest challenge or question around public speaking. So we've been collecting all of these for a year. So we put them all together and found these themes around pitching yourself, definitely around confidence and nerves, around selling yourself, both getting revenue from speaking and selling during your presentations, and of course around content in the actual presentation. So those are the themes we'll be talking about, and we're going to count you down, kind of like David Letterman style.
I love it.
I think our watchers are old enough to remember.
Everybody remembers David Letterman.
and the top 10. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be counting down from the 10 down to the number one question that we get. And so if you're watching live, say hi to us now in the comments so that we know that you're there. And if you have questions for us as we're going along, please put them in the comments as well. Within the top 10, we'll probably get to cover your question in general, but if there's a more specific question that you have, please let us know in the comments, whether you're watching live or in the replay. Say hello, and let's go ahead and dig in to our first question, which is really question number 10, which is around finding and pitching for speaking engagement. So this is definitely a question that we get a lot naturally, is how do you find speaking engagements? And then if you do find them, you find conferences, you find events that you want to speak at, then how do you go about actually pitching for those speaking engagements? I want to say, hi, Karen. Nice to see you. So glad that you're joining us here live. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions as we go through. So Diane, finding and pitching for speaking engagements. So what are some of the ways that you go about looking for speaking engagements?
Yes, well, I like to start with a good old-fashioned Google search. I literally just go in Google and search terms like women's conferences 2022, for example, or if you have a specific subject matter, you could search by that, and conferences 2022. Also, I never thought about this until it dawned on me one day, and then I tried it. If you type in call for speakers, because obviously that is what is on the call for speakers page. So you'll find, and you could probably add like call for speaker, women's conferences, whatever. But I like to just kind of do call for speakers 2022, 2023, whatever year, see what comes up, and then you can kind of filter that way. So those are two good places to start.
That's great. I want to say hi, Ashley. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Ashley.
Nice both for you to be here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I love this. Yes, Google is a powerful search engine. We can find so many speaking engagements, conferences, and events there. The other things that I like to do is if you want to speak at certain types of associations, so industry groups, if you're looking for women in construction, women in automotive, women in accounting, women in human resources, or not just women, but just groups in general, search for those industry terms and the word association. And oftentimes you'll find they have local chapters, state, regional chapters, and of course the national associations, and they oftentimes have conferences and events. So lots of great ways to do some Google searching. The other thing is that if you come across someone that you admire, who you know is a speaker, look to see where they've spoken in the past few years, like the past 4 or 5 years, what conferences and events they've spoken at, because that could also give you an idea of the types of things that are out there that could be that specific conference or conferences similar to those.
Yes.
All right. So we talked about finding the speaking engagement. Let's touch on a little bit about pitching for our speaking engagements. And Diane, I know that obviously you are a big proponent of LinkedIn because we have our LinkedIn for Speakers Masterclass. This is one thing that when women go through our Thought Leader Academy, they go through that course to update their LinkedIn profile. How do you go about setting up your LinkedIn profile so that when you are pitching for speaking engagements, if organizers are looking at your profile, what are they looking for?
Yes. So I would say, first of all, make sure you have speaker in your headline. So that's that bit right below your name. Also, make sure that you include content from any speaking engagements that you've done. And it does not have to be professional photos or professional video. I would say just to demonstrate that you are, in fact, a speaker. So, for example, when you have your position at your company, if you own your company, let's say, so speaking your brand, let's just talk about mine. I have speaking your brand, that I'm a speaking coach, but then I have another position listed under that section as speaker. It's so as if I have two positions at the company. And then under that section for speaker, I'll attach content, which might be my sizzle reel, photos from me speaking at different events, and then in the description, topics I speak on. So that's really a good way to call attention to the fact that you are a speaker. It's sort of the credibility of what you're saying that you can do. You're proving it with that.
Fantastic. And I know for those of you who are watching us right now on LinkedIn, you can make sure to do
Yes.
that if you haven't
Yes.
already. And then the other thing I will add about number 10 here, which is the pitching for speaking engagement, is that when you're actually putting together your speaking proposal to submit for a conference or for an event, whether you're doing it on a website, just a form that they have, or you're sending an email, is make sure that you have a really interesting angle for your topic. So not just the same old, use these 3 strategies to do XYZ that many other people could speak on, but what is an angle for your topic that only you can speak about? And how can you make it kind of a little bit counterintuitive or a little bit surprising for that particular audience to hear that they may not have thought of before? And this is where your thought leadership message can tie in to that as well.
Yes.
All right. So that was number 10. Let's go to number 9, which is all about handling nerves. And this question came from Shell Phelps of Phelps Strategies. And let me read her question. She said, how do you manage your nerves before you present? Usually the night before, I have difficulty sleeping. And the hour before a presentation, I get anxious. I'm hoping that all will go well. And I need any tips to help manage being nervous. Okay. So I will say that, Shell, I hear you on not being able to sleep. I am notoriously not a great sleeper. If there's anything coming up that I'm excited about, or just like things run through my head, I'm a processor, I problem solve in my head, and I don't sleep. So as far as, I don't know, Diane, do you have any recommendations for sleeping better?
Oh, for the sleeping better. You know what I do? So this actually, this comes from my days doing triathlons. It's very easy to get nervous the day before. For example, you're going to swim 2 miles in the ocean. That's pretty scary. So the day before, it's very easy to panic about it. But I like to try to remind myself that at that moment when I'm trying to sleep, there isn't anything I can do about it. So I try to remind myself that my worrying about it is only hurting me for later. It's not fixing anything now. So that if I can just, and of course, the first time you do it, it might not stick, but if you just keep doing that each time it happens, you start to develop a habit of teaching yourself that there's no productivity to the worrying. And then at least you'll get a good night's sleep. And so that's kind of how I deal with not being able to sleep. Now, as far as the nerves beforehand, also my tip comes from triathlon. What I would be waiting on the shore to start the swim, and it's very nerve wracking because you're about to go into the water with a bunch of people, and it's high adrenaline situation, very nerve wracking. So I'm not necessarily suggesting you do this exact thing, but I would do jumping jacks or just jog in place to sort of get the nervous energy out. So if you're waiting to speak, or even that morning before you go to the event, maybe you could just do something physical, even if it's just jogging in place or dancing around your living room or something that you can get the movement. It gets the nervous energy out.
Yeah, that's a great point, Diane, because really that's what so much of this anxiety is. It's the adrenaline in your body that wants to move around. And the more you keep it stuffed in, then the more it's going to make you, give you that upset stomach and, all of those other symptoms that you don't want. So I love this idea of movement to kind of channel that energy. And then I will say that as far as sleeping, so what I have my Kindle that I read in bed before I go to sleep at night, and then it ends up on my nightstand after, when I fall asleep. And so if I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't fall back asleep quickly enough, I'll just start reading again because I'd rather be reading something than having my mind, and then I'll get usually sleepy enough to go back to sleeping. For those of you who are watching either live or in the replay, if you have any great sleeping tips, let us know in the comments. I mean, I drink sleepy time tea at night. Like I do all of those things, but 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm up for
Yeah.
several hours. So I hear
Yes.
you on that. And so, you know what, it happens. And then if I don't get a good night's sleep before a speaking engagement, yes, I'm going to be tired. I still kind of keep my normal caffeine intake. I don't increase it because then that messes
Yeah.
up, my
Yes.
system anyways. But then
Mhm.
I just know I'm going to be tired at the end of the day. And that is just, and then hopefully I'll sleep better the next night because then I'll be
Yes.
super tired.
Right.
All right. So we are talking about handling nerves. And I love your point, Diane, about just kind of moving around before your speaking engagement to move that energy. The other thing that I do is that I will start off my talk by asking a question of the
Yes.
audience, like a show of hands questions or stand up questions, because that
Mhm.
gives me just a couple of minutes to kind of get my footing, both literally and figuratively, and kind of channel a little bit of that initial nervousness before I actually get started with the official part of the talk.
I think it also helps to remind your brain that the audience is on your side and they want to be receptive, they want to be involved, and so then it kind of calms you down a little bit.
Yes. And Karen Wilson recommends sleep meditation. Okay. That's a,
I had
I
to read
should
that
try that.
twice because I wasn't sure if she said sleep medication. So no, it's meditation.
Meditation. All right. That's good. Thank you for that tip. All right. So let's go on to, we're counting down. Number 8 of our top speaking questions that we get is finding the confidence
Mm,
to speak up. So I think this means like speaking up about maybe issues that
right.
could be a little bit more delicate or that you're not sure how your audience will respond to them.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, this is also, something that we talk about a lot on the Speaking Your Brand podcast. We talk a lot about with the women who go through our Thought Leader Academy, because it is, Diane and I both like to work out. It is like working out your muscles. And when you first start, it's gonna feel awkward. You're not gonna kind of, have that same strength that you're gonna have after you do it for a while. So, Diane, how have you developed the confidence to speak up about issues that may be a little bit more challenging to talk about?
Yes, that's a really great question. I would say one thing is sort of the perspective that I have about it, which is that I feel that when we don't speak out or speak up, we're holding out on a group of people that really needs for us to speak up. So if we have a platform to do so, personally, I feel somewhat obligated to do so. So that's the approach I take. And I try to remind myself that by my doing that, I'm taking advantage of the privilege that I have of having the platform and that it might help other people. And so it's almost like I have to, I don't have any choice.
So it sounds like you're thinking more about them, the audience, and
Yes.
the benefit that they get than thinking about yourself and the potential, I don't know, not really even a backlash, but a potential of really, I think a lot of it is about people pleasing
Yes.
and especially us, the way that we're socialized as young girls and women, not wanting to ruffle feathers, not wanting to
Right.
upset people and have people not like us. And so I think sometimes when we have this idea of speaking up, we feel like people aren't going to like us when we do. And a lot of the times it is being okay with not being liked by,
Yes.
maybe certain people who don't agree with your opinions. But that doesn't mean that they won't necessarily like you. They can disagree with you and still like you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, if I could tell my younger self this, I would tell my younger self that none of it matters. So you're speaking up and people not liking, quote unquote, liking you or agreeing with you, it doesn't matter. I feel you need to stand in that power. And that is more important than how many people unfollow you, say on social media, because you said something powerful and that might have ruffled some feathers, but needed to be said.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I just thought of too, Diane, since this is backstage and we do like to
Mhm.
kind of give you the behind the scenes of what it is that we do at Speaking Your Brand. And I know that sometimes when I want to put out a podcast episode about a topic that may be a little bit more uncomfortable, that
Mhm.
I'll bring you on, Diane, so that
Yes.
we can do it together. And so that's
Right.
another tip is that,
Yes.
if you have a podcast or you're doing a LinkedIn live show or even a presentation, bring someone with you, a colleague, and then maybe that, and both of you talk about it together in a conversation, and that could feel more comfortable for you than you just being the solo person talking about it.
Yes, that's such a great point.
All right, so that's number 8, confidence to speak up. Again, let us know in the comments here if you have any follow-up questions to what we're talking about or any insights that you also would like to share. Counting down, let's go to number 7, which is feeling like there's nothing new that you have to say around your topic, which kind of also ties into this idea of imposter syndrome, that you're not enough of an authority or an expert to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about, especially when you want to talk about like a particular angle of your topic that maybe isn't talked a lot about before, which is great because that's what we want you to do with your thought leadership, is to find an angle that's not talked a lot about in your circle of influence. And I know for so many of the women that we either communicate with, podcast listeners or our clients, and they, a lot of times in the very beginning, when we first start working with them, they feel like they don't have anything new to contribute in their area, in their topic area. And so I know that a lot of things that we do is we help them see how a lot of their personal experiences, professional experiences and personal experiences have contributed to the experience and the insight and the wisdom they have gained around their topic. And so if you are a human being on this planet, you have something to say that's new and different from what other people have said on your topic.
Yes, and I would say that I like the expression, there's a lid for every pot. So not every person's way of delivering that same message is going to resonate with the same people. So one person could deliver the message one way and it resonates with a certain group. I could deliver the same message, a totally different style or way of delivering it, and that resonates with other people for different reasons. So whatever it is that you have to speak on, it is important to get it out there. And it is, I think, helpful to remember that it is going to resonate with someone. I can guarantee it.
Yes, that is so true. And I'm thinking, Diane, you and I recorded a podcast episode that's going to be out next week. So not tomorrow, Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, all about what makes public speaking unique as a medium. And it's that when you are a speaker, especially in-person events, and you are at the front of the room, you're automatically seen as the expert, as the authority figure on your topic because you've been selected as the speaker. So if you are speaking at an event, go in with the confidence, knowing that you've been selected and you are the expert on what it is that you've chosen to talk about. So own that role that you have as the person in the front of the room.
Yes. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you're going to get doing it. And so it's not that the imposter syndrome necessarily goes away completely, but you have historical information upon which to base your saying, no, I actually am qualified, to yourself. I actually am qualified to talk about this, right?
Yeah. So definitely choose a topic that is in your area of expertise.
Yes,
You
right.
enjoy talking about it and you want to share things on. You don't necessarily just need to pull things out of the air. So here's an example of this. I gave that keynote speech back in September at an in-person event here in Orlando. And the event organizer, she wanted me to talk about finding your purpose. Now, finding your purpose is not a list of my go-to speaking topics, but that was okay. So I didn't just like go read other people's books that what they had said about finding your purpose. Instead, I said, what does that mean to me? And can I think of an example from my life where that has happened? And then what is a counterintuitive angle that I can take around this idea of finding your purpose? So even though I don't consider myself a quote unquote expert in this idea of finding your purpose, I haven't written a book about it. I don't do a whole podcast about it, but I could speak from my own experience and what I've learned and the lessons I've learned and share that with the audience. So you always have something new and different that you can share.
Yes, I love that.
All right, let's keep counting down. Let us know what other questions you have. Number 6, and this is thanks to Jackie Roby of Inspired Journey Consulting for a question around this. And this is around focusing and choosing the best topic. And so we can kind of look at this for the different types of presentations. So there's business presentations, which are really about brand awareness and lead generation, where you're doing it to attract clients to you. There are keynote talks, which you are selected to give a keynote talk, which is inspiring, motivational, lessons learned to really provide that experience to the audience. And then there are TEDx talks, which is your big idea, usually coupled with your personal story, personal journey that you're sharing in that concise amount of time. So let me read Jackie's question here. She asked, how do you choose the best topic for a TEDx talk? My concern is I only have one shot to be on the stage there and want to bring the best representation of me. So we'll talk first about the TEDx talks, and then we'll back up and talk about keynotes and business presentations when it's around this idea of focusing and choosing the best topic. So I would say to Jackie first is that you don't have only one shot to do a TEDx talk. I know a number of people, friends and colleagues, who have done more than one TEDx talk. Now, usually at different chapters.
Right.
So there's, TEDx Orlando, TEDx Winter Park, TEDx Tampa Bay. Like those are just in Florida. There's obviously lots of chapters. There's university chapters all over the country and all over the world. And I remember I was part of a TEDx committee a few years ago. It was, I think, 2016. And we were looking for speakers. This was in Orlando. And we selected a woman who lived in a different state. And she had spoken at a different TEDx chapter, but she was still selected because we liked her and we liked her topic. So, okay, so don't worry about thinking that you only have one shot, because you could have more than one. But then as far as choosing the best topic, I like to say, choose something that you really feel deep in your bones is the most helpful, most like the deepest truth that you can share with your audience regarding that personal journey, that personal story that led to this big idea, this paradigm shift, this change in the mental model, where you understood the world differently than you did before. You understood yourself differently than you did before. Find that and focus on that versus trying to find a topic that you think is like keyword worthy or like clickbait worthy.
Yes, I love that, because then you'll feel more connected personally to the topic, and that's going to come through in your talk.
Exactly. And the event organizers are going to see that. And if you have to do a
Yes.
video submission, they're going to see that. So I would say focus on what is that deepest, most helpful truth that you want to share with your audience that has profoundly impacted you. So then let's back up and talk about choosing the best topic and focusing when it comes to your keynote talk. And I would say this is somewhat similar to the TEDx talk, although you have more time. You don't have to cram it into like 10 to 12 to 15 minutes. You have 30 minutes, 45, 60 minutes. And I would say, and for this one, it's similar to the TEDx talk in the sense of finding that personal journey, that personal story with that deep truth that you want to share, connecting it to your big idea. But then you're going to really have to start thinking about how can you pull in other things, because a keynote is very much an audience experience. So how can you pull in cultural references, video clips, music? How can you make it a bit more interactive and experiential for the audience? And so think about that. And certain topics lend themselves to be able to incorporate props and costumes and videos and music, and other topics are not. So I like to think about what kind of topic is going to make it so I can add these sensory elements to the talk.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I think we've been to, if you think about the keynote talks you've attended, you've probably seen some that have those elements. So, you can use those as examples.
Yes. And keynotes are not training topics.
No.
So you're not teaching the audience, like, do these 3 steps to accomplish this thing.
Right.
It really is much more big picture. And then the business presentation type of talk, as far as finding and choosing the best topic for that. And business presentations are, again, used for brand awareness, lead generation, client attraction. I always start in this place. And for those of you listening, I'll give you a second to think about it. Where do I start when I think about the topic for a lead generation presentation? Diane?
Let's say the end, what you want what action you want them to take.
Exactly. So
Offer.
we start with the offer, because this is specifically for lead generation or even direct sales. Like, you want someone to sign up for something at the end of your webinar or presentation. You need to start with, what is it that you're selling them?
Right.
What is it that you're promoting to them? One thing, not all the things you do, one thing.
No.
And then back up your content to think about, how can I lead the audience on this journey through my content that's going to get them interested in this offer? Because I've established their goal, I've established the problem they have, the obstacles that are in their way, the solution I have, my framework, my approach, etc. And then walk them through that. And I feel like so many times we get tripped up when creating these lead generation presentations, because we start thinking first, oh, what do I want to teach them?
Yes.
And then what happens is we have like 100 things.
Yes, we have content dump and
right, of all these things we want to teach that we've learned over the past like 10, 15, 20 years. And we're like, here, audience, I'm going to teach you this in 45 minutes.
And then they're overwhelmed, which is a terrible experience. And you feel like, well, I gave them all this information, and they don't know what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. So that's why if you start with the offer, your call to action at the end, and then work back, then it becomes so much more streamlined to get there.
Yes. And I will say, Carol, I think that's why our framework, you mentioned frameworks, why our framework, the Speaking Your Brand framework, to create the signature talk is so effective, because it starts with the end in mind. And what's so great is that you can then tailor the offer to a different audience and then pull out the bits and pieces of the process that led them to that offer. So you start with your signature talk, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. But you are tailoring it to the audience as far as the offer goes, the stories, and whatever that journey is through the talk.
Yes, yeah, our framework. I mean, we use it all the time for ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm so excited because right now, this week, as we're recording this, we're starting the Signature Talk module in the Thought Leader
Yes.
Academy. Women have just gone through the Thought Leadership module. Now we're starting. So they're going to get training tomorrow on how to do their keynote TED style talk. And then next week, they're doing their training on the lead generation signature talk. It's my favorite. Like, those are my
Yes.
favorite trainings. I'm
Me
so excited
too.
about those. All right. So let's go on to number 5. This is a question that we get a lot is, and then we touched on this a little bit, is creating a presentation with the right content or, the right order, the right structure, the right amount of detail, just a lot of questions we get around, what do I put in my talk? How much detail do I go into? Am I giving away too much? Am I overwhelming them? All of those kinds of questions. And like Diane just mentioned, we have our Speaking Your Brand framework that I had created several years ago after working with several clients and figuring out, we're getting to the same place. Let me take a step back and figure out what is the structure of how we're putting these presentations together. And that's where the framework came along. So it helps because it's almost plug and play, because we have the poster board with the Post-it notes on it, and we're asking certain questions to get at certain things in this 3-act structure that we have on the poster board. So that way we make sure that we have the right amount of content and we have it in the right order and in the right structure, because it's not haphazard. You're not starting with literally a blank piece of paper and trying to figure out what to do here, here, and here. It's almost like Mad Libs, right? You're putting in all the building blocks for your talk. So Diane, when you work with our clients in a VIP day, when you have the poster board with the Post-it notes, you're getting ready to go, how do you think about what type of content to pull from them and how to structure it?
That's a good question. So usually the way it goes is, I would say for the most part, we start with the offer, of course. So, but then I just start asking a ton of questions of whoever I'm working with and really trying to get at how is it that they work with their clients or whatever the work is that they do. And then sort of have them tell me. And as they're telling me, I'm writing things down, posting them on the poster board, not necessarily where they're supposed to go at the moment, but then, we'll go back and refine that. But it really just starts with a lot of conversation is really the starting point. And I think sometimes on their end, they don't even they can't really see where it's going. And a lot of times clients will say to me, "Oh, stop me if I'm saying," I'm like, "No, keep talking." They're talking and I'm listening for what's going to be effective to bring the audience through that journey towards that end goal of whatever that offer is going to be, and make them excited about I learned this and I need to work with this person.
Absolutely. And I love, because they do a lot of the talking in
Yes.
the VIP day, because that's what we want them to do. And I know so many of them say, at our halfway point, I've been doing a lot of talking. Is that okay? I'm like, yes. That's exactly what you're supposed to do, because we need to get this stuff out of the head. And I remember I just did a VIP day with a client 2 weeks ago, and this is for a new signature talk that she wants to do, because she had an idea for a new topic that she wants to do for her ideal clients. And she said at the end, after we finished the VIP day, and of course, all of her content from all the questions I asked was on the board. And she's like, "Oh, I was kind of worried that I didn't have enough content in my head for this topic." I'm like, "Oh, no, I think you have plenty."
Yes. No, there's always enough content. Always.
Yeah. So our framework is very handy, and there's a thought leadership workbook that we have that you can go to the website and you can opt in to download it. In that thought leadership workbook is the structure of our framework. So if you go to speakingyourbrand.com/guide, again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/guide, you can opt in to get that free workbook, and that will have that in there. All right, counting down. Let's go to number 4. Here's a question that we get in kind of various wording, is how to create a strong message that resonates with your audience. And this idea of having a strong message that resonates, I think they mean it in a couple of different ways. One way is a message that keeps the audience interested and attentive and paying attention to them as a speaker, but then also a strong message that resonates in the sense of the audience is going to then take some action based on what they've learned or based on what they've heard, whether that action is to go change something in their life, their business, what have you, or to actually go work with that speaker, with that person. And we're going to get to the sales aspect in just a moment. So Diane, let's focus on this idea of the strong message that resonates in the sense of keeping the audience with you, like keeping the audience engaged and attentive as you're talking. What are some things that you have found to be helpful with that?
Well, I think the first thing is to be able to understand from the audience's perspective what their, well, you can call it pain point or their challenge or whatever it is they're struggling with. That's key, because then, of course, your content's going to sort of circulate around that so that you are, again, walking them through that journey of how you can help solve whatever that problem is. But also, I think a message that resonates has to have stories. And so I look at stories as almost illustrations or examples of, either how you work, how you've worked with clients, or your personal journey through solving a similar problem for yourself, but some way that humanizes the work you do to the audience. So it's not just, clear from your talk that you do X, Y, and Z, but that there's a personal component to it and a human component to it. That's, I feel, is very important to making it really resonate on a deeper level beyond just, providing a product or service.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And it reminds me, Diane, of the speaker journey
Yeah.
that we think about for our clients, is that a lot of us are at this expert presenter level where we're very steeped in our topic. We know what strategies to share, what techniques, what tips to share regarding our topic. But then we want to go past that and not just do the expert presentations, but go past that into this idea of a thought leadership message, and that having that strong message that resonates with your audience. A thought leadership message entails a personal aspect of what it is that you're sharing. So if you think about all of the different speakers and experts that are out there, a lot of times they become interchangeable because their advice or their recommendations are like, you heard it from one person, you've heard it from the other. And this kind of goes back to that earlier question about finding something new or different to share regarding your topic. And if you can bring yourself into it, not in a like self-indulgent TMI way, that's not it, but showing who you are, showing what matters to you, showing a little bit of that vulnerable side of you, that's what's going to resonate with your audience. And Diane, I know you were at the keynote talk that I gave in September, and I'm mentioning this because it was the first one I've done in almost 2 years. So I was very excited about it.
It was memorable.
After the pandemic. And, I shared a very personal story about a professional experience that really was very, very heartbreaking, was very hard on me. I lost my voice, my confidence, my purpose for a number of years after that particular experience. But when I shared the details of that, the audience I got quiet. I paused. And the audience was like,
you could have heard a pin drop in that room. Yes, because actually, as you were speaking up until that point, there was a little bit of chit chat here and there and paper shuffling, whatnot. But people were still listening. And so when you got to that point in the story, everybody was looking at you and it was silent as you were talking.
And if I had been sharing, this is about the finding your purpose message, do these 3 things to find your purpose, right? Like zone out, heard these things, follow your passion, follow your bliss, like, okay, right? When you share that personal story of how that lesson you learned, that's where you're going to bring your audience with you.
Yes.
All right. Good. Number 4, let's keep counting down. Number 3. So questions around engaging your audience. So this, and these are more particular questions around, audience activities, things to do with the audience as you're presenting and speaking to them. And this can apply both virtually and in person as well, as far as ways to engage your audience. So Noah, Diane, when we work with our clients and to do their signature talk, we have those 4 colors of the Post-it notes, and one color, orange, is particularly for audience activities.
Right.
So that we make sure throughout the talk, we have orange in there to balance it out. So we don't have a whole section where there's no audience engagement. So what are some of the things when you work with our clients that you think of for audience activities?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So and first of all, I like to mix them up. So if you're doing a talk where you're going to do a couple of opportunities for audience engagement, or maybe you're doing a workshop and there's multiple opportunities for audience engagement, mix them up to keep it kind of interesting. I like to start off, like I call it a warm up, Or you might ask, raise your hand this morning if you were stuck in traffic, or like to get them warmed up to participating, because they don't necessarily know that they're going to participate. They may have been to other sessions where there was no participation. So you want to get them acclimated to that. And then I like doing things like worksheets are great, because it has them write something down. It's simple, very simple worksheet, 3 things on it, nothing fancy, but it encourages them to write down what you're sharing, also sticks in their mind and reinforces what you're sharing. I also like, if it's maybe a larger group, not too large, but you could have them break up into groups, or turn to your neighbor and share XYZ, and then anything like that kind of either gets them moving or gets them talking about what it is that you're sharing with them, and or writing it down, I think can be effective. And it depends on the size of the audience and the sort of the location of it. So those are some ideas.
Yeah, those are all great. And I've used all of those before
Yes.
myself. And the other thing that I like to do is I'll show a short video clip, like a 30-second or a 60-second commercial or something, and then ask for kind of audience responses related to that video, which is obviously related to the topic of what I'm talking about. But like these popular cultural references or popular commercials that most people have seen or heard of, or would be, or have some knowledge of, can also be good conversation starters. And the other thing is that, can be fun, is a call and response.
Yes.
So I was actually working with one of our clients last week, and she had done her presentation in person. So she had gotten it videoed. So I watched the video, and then we scheduled a strategy session to go over her video, and so that she could for suggestions for other things to do with it to make it better. And the one thing that I loved, though, that she did was she had a call and response. So she had this phrase that she did, and she kind of had these particular hand gestures she was using for the phrase. And so she said it, and then the audience said it back. And you could tell. And so I told her, I said, well, do that like 3 times. Like, you did it once, which was great, but like get them like even more fired up, and get them to stand up on the last one, like louder and louder, because that call and response, number one, it's cementing those words, the lesson that you want, but then the movement and them getting louder, it makes it memorable for them. Ultimately, as a speaker, especially keynote speaker, yes, you want them to remember the content. They'll remember kind of like the main takeaway, but ultimately you want them to remember how it felt to be in that room with you.
Yes, absolutely. I always tell our clients when I'm working with them to err on the side of more engagement versus more content that you're sharing. So even if you've created a certain amount of content in your talk, if questions are coming up and they're engaging with you, keep it going. You can always breeze through some of your content you can talk faster, or you can even skip some stuff, but you're having more engagement. That is the gold.
Yes. Yeah. If you have an engaged audience, like, let them go at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because trust me, as a speaker, the more you do this, you will sometimes have audiences, whether virtual or in person, and every audience has its own personality as a group. And will have some audiences that just do not want to engage.
Yes.
And it's like pulling teeth, and it happens. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. No. It's just the way it is sometimes.
The dynamic of the group. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Number 2. Lead generation during your presentation. So this is something we've mentioned now already about when you're doing lead generation presentations, think of your offer first and then work backwards to that. But I want to give a little bit more detail about that, because we also get questions around like not giving away too much of the good stuff, in your free, say, free speaking engagement, because you want people to work with you, and then having a strong call to action. So one of the things that we recommend and that we do is you plant seeds throughout your talk about the work that you do and how you work with your clients. You may have noticed today during our live show, I've mentioned the Thought Leader Academy, and I've mentioned our VIP days a couple of times. That is on purpose. This is backstage. I'm telling you behind, I do that on purpose because I'm raising awareness of how we work with our clients, so that you then get piqued. Oh, this is how they work with their clients, and these are the outcomes, and this is what it looks like. And if I never said anything at all, then you would know that we did public speaking work with our clients, but it wouldn't be specific enough. So plant those seeds during your presentation of how you work with your clients. If you have a name of your program that you use, mention that. And a lot of times conferences will tell you you cannot sell from the stage. And I understand why, because they don't want your presentation to be a
Yes.
sales pitch, but you are allowed to say, in our Thought Leader Academy, our clients work on their signature talk, because you're not selling, you're describing what it is that you do. Diane, what other tips do you have for the lead generation?
Yes, I like that idea of showing the example or talking about, when I work with clients. And I will also, when I used to do talks or whenever I do talks about LinkedIn, so building your personal brand through LinkedIn, I will actually show examples of profiles in the past when I had my own company of profiles that I worked on. So I would say when I worked with Jane on her LinkedIn profile, we went from this to this, clearly evidence of the work that I've done, which, could it be considered salesy? I don't think so, but it's very effective at demonstrating what I do, right? So I like the idea of making it very clear to them how I can help them. And that in and of itself is sort of a, lead generation tactic, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. And I think of it as you're doing the audience a service by letting
Yes.
them know how it is that you work with clients, and potentially how they could work with you. Now, if you are presenting and they haven't said explicitly don't sell from the stage, there's nothing wrong with you at the end saying, if you would like to work further with me, or you like to go deeper with me, we can do one-on-one coaching, or I have this program. Let them know what that is, because the audience cannot read your mind.
Yes.
They're not going to guess. You have to tell them what it is that you do and how you work with them. The other thing that we do in person is we'll have a feedback form that they fill out,
Yes.
where they can check off at the bottom. They'll leave their testimonial and feedback. And at the bottom, they can check off what they're interested in, joining your email list, scheduling a consult call, whatever it happens to be. So that's great for lead generation during, especially in-person presentations.
Carol, the other thing that I like to do is, as I'm taking questions, and I like to take questions kind of as we go, but I'll also take them at the end. When a question gets asked and I can think of some tie-in to the work I do, whatever the question is, I'll say, well, actually, you know what? That question has come up before when I've worked with clients on their LinkedIn strategy, or that question has come up when I've worked with clients creating their signature talk, and yada, yada, yada. So I make it clear again in answering the question, what I do, how I can help them.
Oh, that's a great idea to incorporate it into the Q&A as well. And then the other thing to think about for lead generation during your presentation is that, so I mentioned the feedback form, definitely plant the seeds. And then also what you want to do is that if people come up to you afterwards, after your talk is over, and they are interested in working with you, get out your phone right there, and they'll get out their phone and schedule the follow-up call, schedule a consult call right then and there.
Absolutely.
Don't plan on following up with email 2 days later, because then they forget, and they're not as, they've gone on to other things. Get that call scheduled right then and there, and then follow up with them later with the Zoom link or what have you.
Yes, I highly recommend that. I've done that in the past, and it's very effective.
And then the question that we get also a lot related to this is this idea of not giving away too much information. And so for those of you who are listening, we're giving away a lot of great tips related to public speaking, but we know you're still going to come work with us.
Yes.
We want you to come work with us. And many of you watching are working with us or have worked with us, because it's not just about the specific strategies, or it's not just about the tactics that we're sharing. It's so much deeper, the work that we do. So we want you to do this deeper work with your clients. If you're a coach, a strategist, or a service provider, they're still going to need you. Yes, there are the DIYers, the people who want to do things on their own, and so great. And they may be ready for you 6 months from now or a year from now, even if they're not ready for you right now.
Yes, I love that. That's so true.
All right. Question number 1. Any guesses? Something we haven't talked about yet. And this is definitely a question we get a lot. Getting paid to speak. And I want to thank specifically Laura Curry of Difficult Happens. She has the podcast Difficult Happens for this question, because she wrote in and she said specifically about finding paid speaking opportunities in front of her target market. So yes, you can get paid to speak for lots of different things. And obviously it's like a double win if you can get paid to speak and it also happens to be ideal clients in your audience that who could, also work with you. So definitely those two things would be great. So getting paid to speak. And I would say that There's obviously a lot of different factors for this. And I think one of the things that is most overlooked is that as a speaker, are you putting yourself out there as a free speaker? Or are you putting yourself out there as someone, when event organizers or companies come across you, they're going to assume that you get paid to speak? And so, Diane, what are some of the factors that go into play there?
I am so glad you mentioned that because, as you know, I love personal branding. And I think how you position yourself as a paid speaker or as an unpaid speaker has a huge impact on whether or not you're going to get paid to speak. It doesn't necessarily mean that, if you say that you speak for pay, is, there's not a direct translation. However, what you're putting out to the world, let's say on LinkedIn, for example, is going to impact how people perceive you. So I would say, take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Are you talking about speaking? Are you sharing when you have spoken, sharing any video clips if you have them, images, even just sharing, making a post that, hey, I'm going to be speaking at so-and-so. Make it clear that you are a speaker. And of course, as I said, put speaker in your headline. So that's the first place that I would start. The other thing is that on your website, put a fee on your website. If people don't know you want to speak for money, and if you're afraid to put the fee, then how are they ever going to know that there's a fee associated with it? It doesn't mean that you can't negotiate it, but it is a starting point. So don't be afraid to put an amount out there. And you can always say something like, speaker fees start at $3,500. Contact me for a chat about what might be a good fit, however you phrase it. And you can always, give them friends and family discount, however you phrase it, but it doesn't, you can negotiate that fee. But again, it's clear positioning and how you position your personal brand as a paid speaker.
Yes, that is so true. And I know that there are, some people say don't put any prices on your website, not just prices for speaking, but prices for your products and services, period. We are on the opposite end because I put prices on all of our pages on our website for our Thought Leader Academy, our VIP days. It's all on there. Our speaking fees where they started are on there because I want you as a client or you as an event organizer to know, kind of get a sense of where you stand before contacting us. Because I don't want any surprises on either end. And I think it's just fair and more transparent for both parties to know that. And like Diane, like you said, doesn't mean that we can negotiate on the speaking fees, because sometimes if you have a book, you can negotiate them purchasing copies of your book in exchange for a lower fee. You could exchange visibility at the event. So logo visibility, kind of like a sponsorship at the event, in addition to your speaking fees. So there's lots of places to negotiate for that. But if you put nothing on your speaking page, then a lot of times they're going to try to get you for free. And that can be frustrating because then you don't have a negotiation place to start.
Yes. And I think when you don't have a fee on there, you're going to attract mostly organizations and people looking for free speakers, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with speaking for free. We still speak for free. However, if you don't have a fee on your website, I would be willing to bet a lot of the people that come to you are going to be thinking that you don't charge, and they're not going to want to pay. So when you want to attract higher level, you have to put something on there. And if that eliminates some people, they probably weren't going to pay you anyway. So if you want to get paid, position yourself as a paid speaker.
Yes, absolutely. And you can set for yourself for this quarter or for this 6-month period, I'm going to do 2 free speaking engagements. And then once I get to my first 2 free ones, then anything else after that has to be paid. Set those numbers for yourself. So that way, when someone comes to you, that fourth event organizer who wants you to speak for free in that quarter, you can say, I'm sorry, I'm out. I've reached my limit for free speaking engagements. Here is my fee. So at least going in what your numbers are.
Absolutely.
All right, Diane, we have something controversial to talk about at the end here. So for those of you who are still here, either live or on the replay, let us know. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Women's conferences.
Yes.
Are sadly and unfortunately notorious for not paying their speakers.
Yes.
not paying their women speakers.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about conference breakout sessions where there's 5 tracks going on at the same time and you have your track and you have your 45 minutes. I have spoken for free at plenty of conference breakout sessions and I totally understand that it's free. There's tons of speakers. You're doing it for lead generation. I have no
Hmm.
problem with that. However, I do have a problem with women's conferences who don't pay their keynote speakers because a
Yes.
keynote speaker, they probably have one or two, like a opening and a closing or a luncheon and a closing. Maybe they only have one. And if you're running a conference and you have not allocated some part of your budget for a speaker, now I'm not saying you have to spend $30,000 on a keynote speaker when you have $10,000 budget for your
Right,
entire
right.
conference, but you should have, even if it's $500 or $1,500,
Hmm.
something that shows that you value that person, at least their clothes and hair and makeup, right? Everything else.
Yes.
Uh, so, there's so much obviously that goes into why women don't, conferences don't pay their speakers. Thoughts, Diane?
Yes, no, that's a really good point, and I will say 100% agree with you. And then I would say from the listener, the viewer today, from your side as the speaker, I think you have to make a determination how rigid you want to be about that. So, for example, if you either get invited to speak or you pitch to speak for pay, and if they invite you to speak and they're not going to pay, or you pitch to speak and it's not going to pay, there might be some times when you just decline, and you could say, I'm declining because actually my fee is XYZ and unfortunately you don't pay. I honestly think that the more we do this, the more it's going to change. Let me give you an example. And this wasn't even a women's conference, but back when I had my own company, the Brand Teacher, I got contacted by, and I'm going to give major props to, I'm not going to remember his name, but he was the director of the association. It was like a professional association for Florida trucking. So trucking companies. So they have this professional association that Florida trucking companies belong to. So anybody related to trucking in any way. And he reached out to me by phone asking me to speak at their local conference here because they had an education track, and he wanted them to learn not just safety and things like that, but personal professional development, like personal brand development. How does that play into your career, how you advance, how you position yourself in your career? So I said, he said to me, "What is your fee?" And so I mentioned a fee, and that's the first time I had ever been asked that. So I literally pulled it out of thin air, and I just said, $500. So, I mean, I didn't know, right? So he said, "Okay, well, we really don't have a budget, but let me see what I can do." And so major props to him that because I was very professional, I positioned myself that way. I set a fee, even though I pulled it out of thin air. I had something to say. I explained what I would talk about. He came back to me and he said, "We don't have a budget. However, because you have a fee and I really want you to speak, I'm going to honor your request and we're going to pay you $500." So that's the moral of the story, is if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And so again, not saying you shouldn't speak for free. Again, I still speak for free, but there are times when you should get paid, and sometimes you might have to turn it down if you're not. You have to decide when that time is, and maybe an event is giving you a different type of exposure, and then it's okay for you not to get paid. I've spoken at events where I got sponsorship visibility and didn't get paid, so that was great. I was also on a beautiful stage and I got video, great. However, there are going to come times when you just have to decline, and then you have to stand firm in that. When we all as women speakers start to do that and it becomes clear that we need to be paid, I feel that they will find budget for this,
Yes.
because
Yes.
associations have membership fees.
Yes.
So there's budget for something, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it should be one of the top line items on a
Yes.
budget for a conference or an event, that, paying the speakers. And here at Speaking Your Brand, we pay our guest speakers who come in and do live presentations for our Thought Leader Academy. So they get an
Mhm.
honorarium. Our speaking coaches at our Brave Bold Beyond Live Virtual Summit that we held back in April, the speaking coaches, they were, volunteer in the sense that they're not employed by Speaking Your Brand, but I gave them an honorarium, because a fee, because I know how much work goes into helping our speaker. And they would have done it for free. These, the speaking coaches, they're past clients of ours. They love us. They would have done it for free, but I wanted to respect them and honor them for the time that they were putting in. And I feel like it's the same way. Again, it doesn't have to be a super large fee for a lot of these smaller events and conferences. And so I would just, so like for those of you listening and watching, if you ever run an event, just make sure that you are honoring your speakers and making sure that they feel valued in whatever way makes sense for the type of event that you're running.
Absolutely.
All right. So that was question number 1, getting paid to speak. Hopefully that was helpful to you all. And so I mentioned this earlier, and I have the slide here about the speaker journey. And again, so many of us are at this expert presenter level, and this is great for the lead generation, brand awareness presentations that we're doing. And what we want you to do through the content that we're creating on the podcast and through these live shows is to help you think more about being a story speaker and a thought leader by putting yourself into the material, into the content that you're sharing, and really taking your audience on this journey so that they can learn. Really, you're helping them reflect upon themselves and learning about themselves by sharing your own experience. And then, okay, Cindy has a question. What about those conferences that charge you to speak? I ran into that recently.
It's a great question.
Yeah, Diane, I think you had come across, someone had solicited you a couple years ago, or one of our clients had brought this up.
Yeah, no, I think somebody did solicit me a few years ago, and our clients have brought it up as well about, if you pay X, whatever, you can speak here. And that's a hard no for me, because I'm not trying to, that's advertising. And, I guess if you want to do that and you want to pay for the visibility, that's fine. But it's a whole different model, I think, than you're basically just paying for the advertising. And my guess is the audience isn't necessarily going to be aligned and turn into real clients for you. So you have to think the amount of time and effort you put into creating the talk, the amount of time and effort and possibly money you put into any materials, and the, showing up and all of that. And if you hire a videographer and all those things, what's the ROI on that? Are you going to get clients out of it? So I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too, Diane. And so, Cindy, I would say that there are plenty of speaking opportunities out there where you can speak for free. You don't have to pay. And you have a budget to hire the videographer so that you can get good footage for your speaking reel and things like that. Absolutely. So you can just find a local networking group, find something that's kind of has a good enough size audience and room that it's going to look good on video, but it doesn't have to be like a 10,000 seat, place or anything like that. So definitely lots of opportunities there. And so for those of you who are listening and watching, if what we have talked about sounds like something that you would want to go deeper and further on with us, I invite you to learn more about our Thought Leader Academy. You can go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. We take applications on an ongoing basis. Our next group will start in January of 2022, but it's already November 8th. And so if you're interested in learning more about it, go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. You can submit an application. We'll then set up a consult call with you so we can talk about your goals, make sure the Thought Leader Academy is the best fit for what you want to do. We don't do a hard sales pitch. It's not like give us your credit card right now. Otherwise you're a horrible person, because we obviously do not believe in that. But we want to make sure that if we are the right fit for you, to answer the questions you have and then get you enrolled with our early bird bonuses. So go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. It's a super long sales page, testimonials, all the details, pricing is on there. Everything is on there that you need. And then fill out that application form and we'd be happy to chat more.
Yes.
All right, Diane. Well, thank you so much for joining me on our Backstage with Speaking Your Brand live show. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. On the Monday, whatever that next Monday, 2 weeks from now, Monday, November 22nd, at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And on that Backstage, I'm going to have a client of ours, Kristen Oakley, and she has been a professional speaker for quite a while in the industry that she was in. And so we did a VIP day together a couple of months ago because she wanted to work out her new signature talk. Here's the thing with so many of our clients. Yes. They are fully capable and competent of putting together great presentations, but they know, and we know, that it becomes so much better when you have a sounding board, when you have someone to say, oh, wait. What did you say? Let's go on that thread. That's super interesting, which they just may have glossed over completely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always easier when you have someone else to dig it out of your brain and bounce it off of.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening and for watching. Can't wait to see you next time.
Bye.